Hey, Hal here. I want to talk a little bit about our partnership with OnX Hunt. I've been using it for a while now, and if anybody knows me, they know I'm not a very techie person, but the OnX app is it's a real time saver. I remember the days when we poured over topo maps everywhere we was going to go and stuff, and I don't do that quite as much anymore. Where it's really helped me is scouting, whether it's deer scouting, or moose, or even turkey hunting in the spring, which I do. It really helps out. I don't have to spend as much time running around the truck burning up the gas. I'm just basically using my OnX. Got it on my phone. Don't even carry a GPS anymore. So I just download the areas where I'm going to be hunting, whether it's up north moose hunting, and I use it mostly on the satellite imagery. I like to see the cuts and the clearings and the turkey hunting, the hidden fields and stuff. But everybody's using it now, from the game wardens to land surveyors, and just a great tool. And with our partnership with OnX, if you use a code BWB, you're going to receive 20% off on your first premium or elite memberships. And you just go to onxmaps.com/hunt. You'll be glad you did. Good luck on the trail.
This is the Big Woods Bucks podcast. Come explore the big woods and timber in North America with your host, Maine master guide and deer tracking expert Hal Blood. Listen to Hal and co-hosts Lee Libby and Joe Kruse as they unlock the secrets of big woods whitetails. Each episode will provide valuable insights in the tried and true system Hal has used for the last 40 years to scout, locate, and hunt mature big woods bucks. Listen and laugh as the crew discusses Hal's legendary adventures and learn how to apply a lifetime's worth of lessons from the big woods to your own hunting and outdoor adventures.
Welcome to the Big Woods Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Hal Blood. And, of course, we're down here at Piling Lodge as usual on another rainy day this summer. Supposed to get flood warnings again today. I think we had about enough of it. Sitting here with Joe.
Hello.
And a stranger kind of strolled over this morning. Bad Lee Libby.
Howdy.
How you feeling this morning, Lee?
Good.
Good, yeah. All right. And special guest today is Game Warden MacCabe from the Maine Fish and Wildlife Service. And you got a new title, I hear. You're the Landowner Relations guy, right?
Yeah, one of two Landowner Relations corporals.
All right. And Chris kind of claimed to fame as being on Northwoods Law there, if you ever saw that program. He's trying to forget about it, I can tell.
He's at least comfortable on the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, you see how he kind of turned his head back to the camera there?
How long ago was that Northwoods Law started?
Probably close to 2011 was right around the first time that we started filming, and we ended. It's been close to 8 years now, but most people think that we're still filming. Talk to people all the time, and they're like, "How's it going?" And pretty interesting that they still think it's on, but it's still on Animal Planet. They show it all the time.
Yeah, but when they get down here, didn't they go to New Hampshire and do the same thing?
They did. They went there. I think they filmed there for 6 years, and they just finished filming there last year.
Yeah. Do you think it worked out to promote, ethics in hunting and things like that?
I do. I think that people, they can kind of learn from the laws in the state of Maine and see, if they want to come up here, they can kind of see what we do and who we are. We always joke about it, but the guys in southern Maine, if they're out and about, someone runs into them at a gas station, they think they're a UPS driver or something. They don't know what a game warden is. And I just got back from Utah this week, and I was at a North American Warden conference, and it's very humbling to hear from game wardens throughout the country to realize that like they appreciated what we did to show like what conservation officers or game wardens are doing throughout the country, because they said the guys in California said the same thing, like people didn't know what we did. Virginia, same thing. And they can be very appreciative of that. So that's kind of nice to educate people.
I didn't think about that angle of it. Yeah. Yeah, good. So we'll talk about this landowner relations. I think it's kind of good because in Maine, we've been dealing with this for years because between guiding and outfitting and all of that stuff, people come here, and I always remember people would always ask me to call the book up a deer hunt or something. They'd say, how much land do you have? And how big's your hunting area? And I'm like, well, I don't know. As far as you want to walk, you know. They don't have a concept of that because Maine is pretty unique with some of New Hampshire is the same, but most of the land in Maine is private land, and most people are used to it's all public land. They got to hunt on public land because they can't hunt on private land. And in Maine is pretty much unique in that respect, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we're 94% privately owned,
right,
which is super unique when you think about the access that we do have, where most states are, you're going to go on BPL land, government land. You're not going to go on someone else's private property. Like, that'll probably be a felony in most states.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can't even, like, step over it, across it, or anything. I mean, especially the western states, they're really strict out there, you know. And, but yeah, so it's unique here, but the angle that I wanted to kind of get in with you is because of that, people, I think, take it for granted, and they don't understand it because, I mean, I think still in their mind they know they can go there, but I still think a lot of the people think that it's because they can go there that it is public land, and they're not looking at it as kind of like watch what you do and treat the land like it with respect, you know. And I don't think it's as much with the hunters. It seems to be more with, you probably notice, with the ATVers or maybe the snowmobiles and stuff, kind of forget that stuff, you know. And I've seen places where a lot of trash gets thrown. You see it in the summer, you know, them guys that, not the ones that go with Lee, but people that are off trail riding, they kind of leave their stuff in the snow. It disappears in the snow, their trash, and then there it is in the spring.
It's not a respect problem, it's a helmet problem.
Yeah.
Because as soon as they put the helmet on, they lose their Chrysler mind.
Yeah.
You know, isn't it true? It's like, oh, look, I can go there. I can go there. It's ridiculous. We deal with it all the time. Me and Kris just had a conversation last week for 45 minutes about landowner, you know, people shutting their land down just because one or two morons. And that's all they are, morons.
Yeah.
You know, they're not like you and me. They think they are. They want to be, but they're not. Most of them aren't even from here, although some can be. But the problem is so great. And the hunters, most of them being respectful, are the ones that are going to end up paying the price.
Yep. Yeah. So anybody coming to Maine, just understand that, you know, it's private land. Just treat it. Well, I don't want to say treat it like
it's yours.
Well,
no, treat it like it's your lawn. So you got 500 square feet of lawn in Boston or Massachusetts, and you manicure it and you pick the daylilies out of it or whatever you do with it, and somebody throws a Mad Dog 2020 bottle on it. How do you feel? It's no different. It's the same. You know, just treat it like it's yours.
I agree. I mean, it's one of those things that, if you treat it as if it's your own, then you will absolutely stand up to the standards of a landowner. And we see it, gates being put in, more posted signs being put up since COVID. There's new landowners moving in that don't really understand the way of life that we've always had here. And with that, it's not just the hunters, it's everybody. It's the bird watchers, it's the people that go, the foragers, the people that pick fiddleheads. They all do that on the backs of the private landowners. And without the respect of those private landowners, we're not going to have the access that we do. And that's kind of where Rick and I come into play is we try to help those landowners that are having prevalent issues, trying to secure those properties. It is difficult. It's one of those things where, I mean, you talk about New Hampshire being one of the only places, probably Alaska is very similar, where it's open access. But I heard it in the legislative session this year. You guys were down there for the coyote hunting stuff, and they were comparing Maine and Vermont. And if you drive around during November in Maine, there's a reason why the Vermont hunters are here. It's because they don't have a place to track deer.
Right.
It's posted property, and I mean, I was talking to Dalty about it recently, and we were discussing it, and I was like, well, we wouldn't be here doing a Big Woods Bucks podcast if we didn't have the access that we do in the state of Maine. I mean, it'd be the Back 40 podcast or Slow Tracking or like, I mean,
Behind the barn.
Yeah, Behind the Barn or Hunt from the Bait Pile. Yeah. It's just, we are so fortunate to have what we have here. When you talk about ATVs and stuff, ATVs continuously leave their footprint on the landscape. So that's always on the minds of a landowner. You can't get rid of that like a snowmobile track. During snowmobile season, like we kind of talk about people going, Joe or Lee going out and grooming during the evening, and you come along the next day and there's a big snow pile there where someone with a mountain sled came along, and that disappears over time. So the landowner will forget about that. But ATVs are a little bit different where they have an impact on the landscape. So that's why ATVs are so strictly regulated here in the state of Maine, and you have to have landowner permission or be on a ATV trail. But snowmobiles, you don't have to have that, although there is legislation that just came into effect this year that will kind of change off-trail riding a little bit, where it's more agricultural, where we were having issues with snowmobiles going into areas where agriculture or say they have piping out there for watering their agriculture, and they were having issues with snowmobiles out in their fields. So there's a new law that's going to be a civil trespass for people that ride off trail in those locations where they're posted.
Oh yeah.
So it's a posting, but it's different than a normal land posting?
Correct. It'll be no off-trail riding, because we never really had that in effect before, where if they were riding off-trail, the sign says, stay on marked trail. Yep. There's really no violation. It's criminal trespass, and they'd have to be warned first, and then they'd have to be issued a summons. So this allows for us to have a civil violation for those areas where we can't stop that. Like, they go on this section of trail that says closed to off-trail riding. You can't do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's obviously the big thing here, is the off-trail, and it's why everyone comes, and especially since the off-trail segment has grown so much, it is starting to create issues. It's like, shed hunting was never a thing. Now that shed hunting's the thing, you have all the vehicles in the springtime out on the roads where it was never an issue. Roads didn't get beat up in the spring because no one traveled them.
Right.
Now, I mean, I see that as a coming issue, just because landowners are going to only do it for so long and say, we're sick of coming in and repairing these roads every spring.
And we talked about that too with the snowmobile law, because we don't want to prohibit people from going to look for sheds. We don't want to prohibit the guys that are rabbit hunting off trail, the backcountry riders that are doing it in the right places. We don't want to prohibit that. But you're right. I mean, that's why one of the biggest reasons we don't have a spring bear hunt is the landowners were saying there's an issue with our road systems that time of year, and we don't want to pay for the damage to it. So although it's a management issue for us for bear hunting in the spring that we would like to see, there's definitely some issues with road use, with the springtime being torn up. Like you said, shed hunting has become really, really big, and money's driving that. The amount of price for antlers right now is driving that. Anytime you get money involved, it really pushes the issue. And we're doing that all on the backs of these private landowners. Like, this isn't, I don't own 1 million acres. I don't own 1,000 acres that I can shed hunt on. I rely on the forest products companies that own those to go out and do that. And I think that's the big thing to get out there, is for people to realize that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a business owner, we always think about that, because we're out of business without it. I mean, everything up here is.
Part of the reason for the off-trail guys being so popular now is New Hampshire banned it.
Right.
And that kind of screwed everything up. But on the flip side of that, snowmobiling generated $675 million last year, which was paid out $4.5 million to the snowmobile clubs. So would you like to own that business?
Yeah.
So, that money has to increase, and we're working on that diligently right now. And the reason that has to increase is because when a landowner calls and says, I've got 12-inch ruts in my thing from some guy with a 6-place trailer and a dually, then we'll have the resources to go fix that. The other thing about the mountain guys is, they run up through what used to be a clear cut, but maybe it's been planted, and they rip up 4 or 5 little seedling trees, that are 3 feet tall or 4 feet tall, and they break the top off. Well, to them, it's just vegetation. But the guy that owns it, those are, potentially $50 or $100 a piece at maturity. And that's what makes those guys mad. So I was just thinking the other day, I wonder if we could get some type of program for Onyx where a large landowner could go in and mark out an area that had just been planted and have that, on that. So an off-trail guy could look at it and say, oh, this has just been planted, but here's an avenue to get where I want to go.
Well, along those lines, I've thought about Onyx being able to put places where you could do off-trail riding.
Yeah,
hey,
absolutely.
This is an area that's posted that you are allowed to go here. That way they have a place to go and play. Any of those places, that's always a good thing, especially with the, advantage of Onyx. It tells you who a landowner is, so you can go talk to them easily. Right. That's the whole reason for Onyx being there. And in Maine, that's an important thing.
Yeah, the next step, and it's been put on the table once before in conversation, is out west, a lot of places you have to have a guide to go into certain areas, and that guide holds the lease on that piece of property. And I can tell you, if it continues, the next step for one particular landowner is to, okay, Lee Libby, Summit Outfitters, whatever, you lease this 10,000 acres. Any damage that happens inside of that 10,000 acres is your responsibility. Nobody else can go in. I don't want to see that. No one wants to see that, because then that opens the door for everybody to lease their land, whether it's for mushroom hunting or shed hunting.
Yeah, you bring that up too, and we've talked about it with some of the larger landowners and the AFMs of the world, the Warehousers. They make a lot of money on leases in all the other states that they have.
Absolutely.
And they don't want to go down that route. They don't want to have leases. So it is important to realize that it's a delicate balance. I got a little guy at home now. He's 2.5, and when I went into this position after being in the field for 15 years, it was super important to me to try to keep this tradition going. And just like you guys doing the tradition of tracking in the state of Maine, it's important to keep that tradition moving through our generations. And I don't want to see in 10 years that we have to have reverse posting, and that a place that doesn't have posted signs we can't go on. I want to see continued open access, but it is that delicate balance. I talked to a grad student from USM who was doing a study, and he compared Maine to, I think it was Finland, that it was very similar with the access. And he says, we are on such a teeter-totter, and it can swing one way or the other really fast. Mm-hmm. And if that changes, we are going to have major change in the state. You were talking about snowmobiles and ATVs, and I've listened to the podcast enough to be dangerous that I know that Hal hates talking about snowmobiles, but unless it has to do
he's outnumbered.
Yeah, unless it has to do with coyote hunting. But the big thing about it is a lot of these companies, I see it with the ATVs, the companies are making machines bigger and bigger, and they're not we can't keep up with the technology that they're advancing with. So like ATVs, I'll use as an example. Like 4 years ago, we had the ATV task force that made it 60 inches wide, 2,000 pounds. Well, now you see these machines that are up this way, and they're like a Jeep. They are
bigger.
They're huge.
Yeah, and 5 times the cost too, which always blows my mind that someone just wouldn't get a Jeep.
Yeah, I laugh. I say the same thing. I'm like, why wouldn't you just buy a pickup truck that you could ride all the roads? Like, I don't understand it. But with that technology, also becomes damage to the trails, and we can't keep up with it. I mean, luckily for ATVs, they increased the registration, so the money goes to trail maintenance specifically. So it was a $25 increase that goes to trail maintenance. So this year, we had a huge increase in the amount of money for trail maintenance. That's the only way that we're going to be able to like continue to have this relationship with landowners, is to pay for the trail systems and to continue to do the maintenance, because if the maintenance falls on the landowner itself, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. And that goes back to the money, right? So this year's shortfall, out of the $4.5 million they'll pay out, there was an additional $4.8 million requested for just such things like that. So right now we're 4.8 upside down. So that money needs to come from somewhere, and it's there. It just gets put in the wrong spots at the moment. That general fund is just, it's like my piggy bank. It's never safe.
So, we've always known that we're basically here at the, until the landowner doesn't want us. I mean, a lot of people, especially you find that if someone's grown up here and it's always been that way, it's easy to get into that mindset that it's always going to be that way. But if you come from somewhere else and you see, like where I grew up with leased land everywhere, and that was the only way you hunted, or you went on a piece of, public land that was crowded, it's easy to take for granted. And it would be no problem for a landowner to put up gates everywhere, and there's nothing anyone could do. I've always thought that the tree growth tax should be tied to it, that if you're benefiting from super cheap taxes, then
that's
I know. No one wants to hear it, and the landowners.
No, especially
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to the large landowners about that, and their philosophy in a lot of ways is it's not a tax break that they're looking for. They don't worry about their taxes as much. It's not the money to them. They want control of their property, so they don't want to have a stipulation that's tied in with the tax break in order to have required access. So there is some like fine line there. Like when you talk to landowners about that, like I've had conversations with them that it's definitely interesting talk. It keeps coming up for sure. Like there's a lot of I think the value of that is that like yourself saying that is that you want to help a landowner, and there's many ways to go about that. It's just how do we go about it in the right way and a benefit to them and something that they also want.
Well, it's perceived as a penalty now because it's already been that way. But if it was the reverse, it would be a reward for keeping your land open, I guess. So, or like, we just kind of started on it, discussing a little bit is easements or some way, to actually have an easement for the trails so they're permanent, because that's going to save a ton of money in the long run, not having to change trails all the time and move everything around.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk trails or just hunting in general, if you look at a map of the state of Maine, I mean, with 94 to 95% privately owned, we would basically be hunting on a football field, we would compare it to. So all hunters in the state hunting on one football field, it's going to be a little bit ridiculous. It's funny, I mean, I travel all over. I talk to game wardens all over, and I mean, Pennsylvania has one of the highest amounts of hunters, and you ask them down there, you're like, well, where do you hunt? And they're all friends during the evenings when they're at camp and stuff, but you don't go on anybody else's property. They want to show each other their deer at the end of the day, but it's all serious business at the end of the day because they hunt their land. They don't hunt anybody else's. They do deer drives, and if it's not posted down there, you still can't go on it. And that's the big thing that we're really reverse posting keeps coming back up. It's a topic that keeps coming back up around Sunday hunting. We hear it from the large landowners, the small landowners, and really we're kind of at the graces of a landowner when it comes down to it. And I encourage people to listen to your landowners. Like, that's super important to do. We really try to help our landowners out the best that we can. And there's several programs, like there's one on called Sharing the Land, which is out in Wisconsin. It's Doug Duran, and he has an interesting point where he talks about in the Midwest, it's a lot of closed access. So what he tries to do is get hunters to go out and help these farmers on their farms, go do work, put up fence, all that type of stuff. In Maine, that's probably not as realistic. I mean, we're talking large forest products. So, like, they don't want me to go out and run a harvester for them for the day. That's just not what we're going to do. But is there a way that we can help them with bridges, with roads, like we are with the ATV funds, anything like that that will continue access?
Yep. Now's a perfect example. So all these floods we just had, our trail system was wiped out again. Probably over by you too, huh, Lee?
I haven't even.
You haven't heard about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go look.
I haven't been out myself, but my son-in-law was out the other day getting some cameras and said he took some videos. I mean, it just blew out our trails on the backside of the mountain here, gullies everywhere, and washed out. And I wasn't even aware of it, but you can't drive around back there. So, along the lines of what you were saying, if there was help with that, because I look at it, it's costly.
Yeah,
there'll
be disaster money, but we won't be able to request it till next year sometime. So those funds to fix all that will come out of the snowmobile clubs now that are all volunteer run, and the fundraise money will have to go into that to fixing the trails, because the landowners shouldn't have to do it. You know what I mean?
No, not unless they're. I mean, the only way they're going to do it, well, they got to work it. I mean, they're logging it, and that's it.
But
if they don't have to,
right?
Private landowners could let that old woods road be washed out for.
And that's what they'll do. I mean, if they're not actively logging in there, and they're not going to maintain it. But that is important to our trail systems. I did the American Forest Management Bear meeting recently, which they're one of the only ones that they actually get all their hunters together every year to go over their bear baits and like what the policy is. And one of the things that I said to everybody, I said, hey, listen, like, be a good guide. Call AFM if there's issues, if there's a culvert out or anything like that. They may not go out and fix it right away, but it's something that they would probably like to know. I mean, Maine has a very strong landowner liability law. So unless there's something egregious that the landowner does, like they're covered. So if someone gets hurt, but the reality is it's the right thing to do to let the landowner know that, hey, just like my property, if I had a culvert washout, I'd want to know. It's always that benefit of more hands make less work, I guess, is the right way of thinking of it.
And the more involved you get with the landowners, I found from being over there, is that they get to know you. They get to know the people that are around you. So when there's one person that's not, that's being a moron, then, they don't just assume that everybody is. They know that, all right, I'm going to call Lib. This is going to get taken care of. I go back to the Seven Islands relationship that I have with them, and I don't think it could get much better. I mean, we talk a lot, and if there's a problem, we fix it. If they ask us to do something, it's immediate, and that helps.
I think the message, too, is like that even if you're not a snowmobiler, but you're a hunter, or you're not an ATVer, but you're a hunter, or you do one or the other, it all correlates to each other. Being a good steward of the land is going to benefit everybody in the end. And it goes a long ways to have those relationships. Like, we talk about clubs that are dying. I mean, there's a lot.
Dying.
They're literally dying.
Right now.
It's the 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds that are the club members. And there's not a younger generation coming up into these clubs.
They're riding.
They're riding. Exactly. 100%.
Free mobilers.
They're the ones.
Mobilers.
Yeah, they're the ones that are out there tearing the trails up, and it's no downside to them that they want to ride, but they need to be involved. And I don't know what the solution to that is, because when you think about it, I mean, you see all these people that grow up, they want to hunt, they want to fish, they're a younger generation. They want to do all the stuff, but they don't want to work for it. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to be a part of a club. I mean, that's the important part of this because, I mean, you think about an ATV snowmobile trail it's a winter road. That's a great place to moose hunt or deer hunt. Yeah, shed hunt, anything like that.
Partridge hunt.
And if it's not there, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I tell people is it's just the little things for the landowners too. If you bring this back full swing into the hunting end of it, ever since I've been outfitting, I mean, they changed the law went to the trail system only for ATVs. I don't know, that's been 15 years ago or so, but since that time, there's been a lot of times people call, they book a hunt or book a lodging stay or whatever, and they got ATVs. I go, can we bring, our ATVs? I just tell them for hunting, leave them at home. You can't go nowhere with it because it's a trail system. I think they just want to bring it because they want to hunt, but they also want to recreate. And I know what's going to happen if they bring their ATV. Oh, yeah. They're ATV riding. They're not hunting. Yeah. I go, if you come up here, you're coming up here deer hunting for a different reason. You're not coming up to ride around on an ATV. And you just have to explain it to them. And, if you're an outfitter or a guide or something, you can probably do a little bit better at that and get them to understand the reasons for it. Because most of these people, I mean, you talk to hunters from somewhere else and they shoot a deer out in their back 40 and they can't drag it 100 yards. They got to go get an ATV and load it up and get it
golf cart.
And I'm like, yeah, it's like crazy,
Yeah.
E-bike with a wagon.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people work harder, make more work for a simple task, and not that dragging a buck a mile is a simple task, but still, people ask me, you ever go get help? And I go, no. I said typically if I shoot a buck in the woods, when I leave the woods, it's coming with me because I don't want to walk all the way back in there to go get help. The time I went get help and went back, I could have
twice as many steps.
Yeah, I could have headed out anyway, Changing my way of thinking as I get older a little bit, though. Having a little help can come in handy. But still, I try to go, if I'm going out, get it at least somewhere out.
We touch on that a little bit. Like the department and Lee Cantor's been on here talking about it a little bit. But we encourage people like now, hey, listen, you got to hunt moose. You got to hunt them hard. Like you hunt them like deer. It's not like the old hunt that you used to hunt.
Oh, you can still shoot 60-inch bulls right out of the truck. Let them ride around.
But, I mean, we encourage people to, like, quarter it, like, save the moose, like, quarter it, gets it cooled down faster. But you see these people every year. They're riding around in their sweatpants. They got the 4 windows down. They're looking around. They got, like, about 100 yards of rope that's nylon braided.
Yeah.
And they're like looking at them and you go, what the heck are you going to pull out? Like, I mean, and they're the ones that ride around and they're like, I don't see any moose.
Yeah.
I don't see any moose.
Yeah. Hey, Hal here. Just wanted to tell you we're excited about our partnership with Minus 33. Minus 33 specializes in merino wool base layers for outdoor enthusiasts, from tops and bottoms to hats, socks, gloves. And our gear is going to keep you warm and comfortable no matter what adventure you're on, especially those big woods ones. We're a 5th-generation family, owned and operated, a New Hampshire woolen textile manufacturer. They have over 106 years of woolen expertise, and they started manufacturing woolen socks, the Mountain Heritage ones, in New Hampshire in 2018, with the idea that a quality product, affordable pricing, and can be worn and loved from season to season, no matter what your experience level or skill is, so no one should feel uncomfortable or ill-prepared in the outdoor community. Having a reliable gear is one of the first steps towards a lifetime of passion or whatever activity it is. And my caveat to that is you got to wear your woolies. Cotton is death.
Hey folks, Rick Libby here from Big Woods Bucks. I'm here today to tell you about our new packs. This is our new small pack, which the first time I saw it, Chris showed it to me and I said, that's the Nuna, because that's the perfect pack if I'm getting on a buck track at noon, and it'll hold the sandwich, your water, a little bit of gear. It's virgin wool, made in USA, waterproof resistant, has a liner on the inside. It's a great pack. This pack, this is our newest large pack, which when I used to carry the older pack, I always wore suspenders because it bothered my hips a little bit. So we designed one with shoulder straps, and this is a great pack. It takes the weight off your hips, puts it onto your shoulders. It's got a GPS pouch right here in the top you slide in. Same deal, it's water resistant on the inside, got that liner. It's a perfect pack. So I go to bigwoodsbucks.com, get yours today, and I'll see you on the track.
As you all know, Big Woods Bucks is devoted to promoting the best equipment for tracking and still hunting the big woods. Part of that equation for success is the sights that sit on your hunting rifle. We've chosen Skinner Sights as the company to produce our custom-built BWB Tracker Series peep sight. It's constructed of solid steel, has our custom ghost ring, and was co-developed by some of the best trackers in the world. To get yours, go to bigwoodsbucks.com and click on the Optics tab.
The other thing about what I've always done, I always felt as a guide a little more obligated because I'm making a living on that landowner's land, right? I get to go there.
Definitely see it differently, yeah.
And so I always saw it differently. So one of the things I did for the first landowner that I had got bear baits on was actually Lou Hilton land up north of town, and I would, for the forester in town, Bill Jarvis, I would always I asked him what I could do, and I started maintaining the hiking trail up there, and I actually built another one on the back so they could make a loop out of it. So every year I would go up, clear out any blowdowns. Every few years it needs some new paint, paint and blaze again. And I did that for the whole time. And the other thing I'd do is if I saw periodically a culvert will get plugged up, right? And then it's going to wash the road out if you don't take care of it. So I would do that myself. If I see a culvert plugged up, usually it's just a piece of wood or two, get sideways in it and pull it out and get the water running again and things. Simple, and anybody can do that,
Yeah, a lot of people just don't want to.
Yeah. But I mean,
don't want to get out of the truck.
We're trying to get the word out to people that come here to do things like that, right? Because it takes you 2 minutes and it's a lot of goodwill.
It's funny you were comparing people working harder to do something than they have to, and I always compare that. One of the biggest problems, not as much up here, but southern Maine on these smaller woodlots, is illegal dumping. I got a call from a landowner the other day. Said he had asbestos pipe, and we cleaned up 7 ton of shingles off of his property last year in Auburn. He owns 300 acres down there in Auburn, and this woodlot, and he wants to leave it open to the public. And that's even after the 7 ton of shingles. Well, as I'm driving there the other day, there's a refrigerator in the middle of the road. It's probably the only dirt road in Auburn. So, and I'm thinking to myself, I go, it probably took more work for the guy to drive out here towards Minot to dump that refrigerator than it would have to take it to the Auburn dump. And you see it constantly with tires, a lot of stuff that you have to pay for.
That's right. I was just going to say that. If you got to go to the dump and pay $10 to get rid of a refrigerator, somebody's going to go dump it. And that's the most ignorant thing I ever heard.
It really is. Yeah. It's just I laugh at it a little bit, but also at the same point, I see the frustration from the landowners, and it's really? These people do this all the time? I mean, last year we did 37 ton of trash and almost 800 tires that we picked up in one day in September last year.
Wow.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
And
what's the fine for something like that?
Well, it'd be $1,000 for litter, but you got to catch them. So the best thing that game wardens ever had invented was Publishers Clearinghouse.
Really?
Because typically when people throw their trash out, they throw all the junk mail. And Publishers Clearinghouse is the first one that goes. And it's always got a name and address on it. So I always loved Publishers Clearinghouse.
Yeah.
I mean, I never won the big check. I never got that. But
you got to be
but you win.
Yeah.
Right? You win.
a certain person anyway consciously go out there and dump, but then to leave your name on it.
Yeah, it's called
Yeah.
Joe Dirt.
The other, I mean, typically, like, and it's not, it's typically litter, but I mean, we see it a lot during deer season. Like deer carcasses, they dump them on the side of the road. They dump them in woodlots, and really, when it comes down to it, it's the people that are doing it. They're just they've piled it up. They've thrown it in their like Tupperware in the back after they skinned out the deer. They deboned it, and they want to get rid of it. They want it off of their property. And then they throw it on somebody else's. So the irony behind it is actually, it's pretty disgusting that people would do that. The reality is you can put a deer on somebody's property. You just have to ask. I mean, up here, I'm sure there's areas where you can dump deer. The landowner allows you to do it. But in southern Maine, when it's drawing attention and someone's dog is walking down the road and they get in it and start rolling in it, like, it's going to be bad. Because I know I'm a dog owner and I don't want the dog coming
I never
back.
thought about that part when I was throwing it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know when Great Northern used to own some land up here too, up north of town, and they ended up selling it out. And I remember there was a couple of townships, and it was managed by I think it was bought by Yale University or something, but no, it was Hancock Insurance, and then Wagner managed it. And they sent a new forester over because there hadn't been any logging for years there, and since Great Northern kind of went up, got done with it. But anyways, the new forester, he had came from down east, and I met him right off because he was looking for a place to stay in town, and he came up one day and saw my camps there and asked if he could rent for the summer, and I said, yeah, we can do that. He only needed him for the midweek, so it was great. I still could have him for the weekends. But anyways, I asked him, I'd been trying to get bear baits on that land, and when Great Northern had it, they all I heard was, well, we got to go back to everybody that's ever had a bear bait there. And I'm like, that's kind of ridiculous. So, but I didn't think much of it. So the first thing I did was say, hey, what's the chance I get some bear baits there? And he goes, yeah, put them on a map. I'll send them in. Well, I got to know him, and anyways, they started, that area hadn't been cut, hardwood hadn't been cut forever. I mean, there's huge hardwood in that country. And so they were going in to chase that. So he's starting to rebuild the old roads. And he was telling me they were going to put the gates up. And I'm like, why would you put the gates up? He said, well, we got to control the people dumping trash and stuff. And I go, nobody dumps trash around here. He goes, they don't? And I go, no. I said, you'll never see any trash dumped in the woods here. I mean, you might see a beer can here and stuff like that.
An old muffler or something that they
yeah.
After
Probably
off.
the old oil can from
But
the woodcutters.
Yeah.
It was foreign to him because coming from down east, I guess it's a tradition down there that the woods is a dump for everybody.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah. He said, down there, he said they'll dump pickup loads of everything.
Yeah, I think
all
the
trash and
traditionally the Millbridge ATV Club is like the highest producer during our landowner cleanup day.
yeah,
And they clean house. They get a lot of trash down there.
yeah.
Oh.
I've only ever one time, and I know where it is. Somebody pushed I think it was a propane range, an old one, down over a bank and years ago, and that's the only time I'd ever seen anything dumped here. Literally just dumped, So when I told him that, he said, well, maybe I'll rethink that. And he never did put any gates. And, when he was around here for years, and there was never any problem. But so I think it's a local issue too, It's a mentality, I think, in certain areas. But this area is, and I'm sure Rangeley's the same way, is people they see more of the beauty in the land and take care of it a little bit better,
I was just thinking, I don't think I've ever seen a dumping spot out here.
No.
Never seen someone where they backed up and just dumped it.
The most
pile of
I've ever
trash.
seen was brush. Somebody had a load of brush and kicked that out somewhere. But
In Rangeley, we'd know if we saw shingles because we'd be like, "Ooh, what color is that?" Oh.
Yeah, you know where it came from. And the contractor.
And the contractor, yeah. No, it would never happen. But
It's funny. I mean, I've seen everything. I mean, you name it. I've seen campers, full campers. I've seen vehicles dumped. I've seen boats dumped. I just got a call yesterday about a boat that was literally the serial number was ground off of it, and it was dumped at the Sabatis boat launch. Like, just dumped and left. And I'm like, that's just odd. Like, I mean, why are you doing that? Like, that's just weird.
Maybe he thought somebody else would take it.
Yeah, I mean, free for the. He should have put a sign on it, free for taking. But and then, I mean, literally shit. Like, seeing that dumped in the woods. Like, it's just. I know at the Maine Professional Guides banquet, like I talked about it, but I mean, like literally, I had Homer buckets full of human feces with adult diapers, and it's just like you're thinking to yourself, you're like, what is going on here? Like, what mental status is that person?
not well. Not well.
Yeah. So in the landowner relation, what's changed the biggest with us as a club is that we don't deal with the landowners anymore. It's all the state now, and it's so different than when I first started, where you had a relationship with the forester and you were buddies and you knew everyone, and it's just that part's a lot different, and it's good in some ways because it's one less thing, but it definitely, now there's that barrier there, and I don't know if that's good or not.
Yeah, I think there's some disconnect. I mean, when you talk about a lot of these large landowners, you're talking to a third party entity,
right?
Like you're talking to a manager of the manager, and then the third person is the actual landowner. And a lot of those, like, it's protection for that landowner. They just don't want to deal with it. It's an investment for them. But you do lose that continuity for sure.
Yeah, and the empathy, like, when I talk, and I still talk to my landowners. James is great at the state, and if we have a problem there's a couple that don't like me to contact him, but most of them are really good. But if you lose that contact when you call them and explain to them what you want or what you need, there's an empathy there that they feel for you because they know you're not making any money. They know you're trying to do it for the better good of the sport or the state or the community. So there's a feeling there. And then when you take that out and you got an email request by somebody in Augusta, they're nice guys, but it's still an email request to a forester who's just, it's pretty easy to say, yeah, we don't want to do that. So I think it's a bad thing. I like those guys, and in some cases maybe it's good, but for us, I don't like it.
We actually just had a case that we lost for ATV operating on ATV operating on land of another without permission, and the judge ruled that it was the third party person that was a representative of the landowner, that he did not feel that person was the representative of the landowner. And I'm like, oh boy, we're kind of getting into the weeds here, because like, I mean, I can tell you that you're an agent of my land, and you can tell someone to leave. So I was like, that was very interesting. And I don't know where that's going to go.
Was it a George Soros judge?
Soros judge, yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I got to ask you a couple other things, because we had I got an email from one of the followers that we talked last year about the deer yard program we have there now, with getting the funding for the deer yards, and it's coming out of the doe permit fees, and he wanted to know, I guess it's got to be available somewhere, because hopefully you found it, but they wanted a little better explanation of how much money that raised. I'm sure they're interested because it's a good thing for everybody. So I know the doe permits last year were up quite a bit, and more people bought them because they could, and they used to be $4 and now they're $12. And a lot of people, we talked about that, thought it was outrageous that they had to pay $12 for a doe permit, and they ain't realizing it's an extra deer they can shoot now for $12.
Right.
It's cheap.
Yeah, small.
Cheap.
That's small thinking.
I'll take a dozen.
Yeah, small thinking. But so, anyways, what was that figure for?
I ended up talking with our wildlife staff. The grand total was it was right around $1 million that they took in. So the exact number, they weren't sure. He didn't have the exact number, but it was close to $1 million that they took in just from the antlerless deer permits, which I'm happy to say, and Lee probably heard about this, but we just purchased 700 acres of deer management area over in Rangeley.
Yep.
That's going to be open to the public, and that was purchased with that funding. And we're getting ready to close on another 8,000 acres that will also be purchased with some of that money. But as you know, $1 million sounds like a lot, but it doesn't go very far when you're purchasing land.
Right.
Land's expensive, but the reality is we've for the first year, that's very, very good.
Yeah, and I mean, that's going to build in the pot. That's not the only place the money's coming from. There's going to be a pretty good pot of money.
And it sounds like the expectation is that it'll be right around the same, if not more, this year also.
Yeah.
Where's the 8,000 acres that was purchased?
I don't know exactly. Like, we don't release when it's pending.
If you haven't purchased it yet, you better not say a word.
Yeah.
The ink's not dry yet.
Yeah, so they don't say where it is.
It was
or
the
anything
biggest
like
secret
that,
in Rangeley for a long time. Like
Yep.
they would tell you there's something in the works, but nobody would ever disclose where those property lines were.
Yeah,
which is a good idea.
Yeah, it's pretty typical. Like, they don't want to do that until they close. But that one in Rangeley is a large deer yard. I mean, and it'll be really, really good.
Yeah, I'm hoping that 8,000 is one that I had something involved in, but we'll see. Yeah, so that's good. So people now that
The money's going to good use.
$12 is going
Yeah,
to
along.
something good.
I mean, and along those lines, like I think about it a lot for myself. I think about like what we have for trophy animals here in the state of Maine, and I get it. Like, a lot of people don't think that an antlerless deer is a trophy, but it's a deer.
Oh, in
that
the
you get to
frying
harvest.
pan, it's
And
a trophy.
And if you think about it, $12 is cheap. I know Hal and I were on the committee for this, and we were talking about it at the time. And you think about what you have to pay for deer out west. And, like, we talk about it a lot within the Warden service, like trophy fines and stuff. Like, if you kill a moose that's out of season or not a legal bull in a lot of states, it's $50,000, like,
Right.
or $25,000. Like, we don't have trophy penalties like that. So when you're paying for a $12 antlerless extra deer, it's very cheap. And and like you said, Joe, it goes to a good cause, and we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now there's plenty of does, so buy
my God.
'em up.
I saw 2 nice bucks this morning, though.
You did.
Yeah, they were already. One of them he had to be close to 20 inches wide. Just was starting his.
Were they in
G2C
the
cocker.
game reserve?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw 2 last week on a hike. I've been getting my body in shape. You know, when you're an old man, you gotta
Yeah.
keep in shape. So I've been doing my hikes. But yeah, I saw 2 small bucks. You know, rack bucks, but not big ones. But
I did talk to I think, unfortunately, this rain is going to have an impact on the birds and like the
Yeah,
grouse
it already
and stuff.
is.
And
We're seeing it.
I did talk to Nathan Bieber, our deer biologist, about a month ago, and he was saying that the rain will have an effect on the fawns with hypothermia and stuff. So we may see a decrease in the number of fawns this year, but it's better than what they had out west. When I just returned from Utah, they said it was like 24% survival of deer out there this winter.
Wow.
They had so much snow.
Yeah.
yeah,
And he said that they showed me pictures of like 36 like bull elk dead just from the snow.
Oh, man.
And they said that it's going to have a huge lasting effect because they aborted fawn. The ones that did have fawns aborted, and then a lot of fawns died. So it's good.
Yeah, I was wondering that seeing all the videos from this year out there. I mean, it's just
Utah shut
crazy
down their
amounts.
shed season, like, because they have a season for it, and they shut it down because of the stress on the animals. But they got like 900 inches in Snowbird and 700 inches in Sundance and Park City.
we haven't started going down that
But they
road
needed
talking
it.
about that yet, have we?
Yeah, they needed it. you know.
A season?
Yeah.
No, I
Good.
hope not.
Yeah, me
I
too.
don't want to see that.
You know, it's everything's always changing. You have different things like trail cameras now. You know, that's something that's different out west than it is here, and drones.
Yeah.
You know, drone technology is it's like the law is always catching up because
Yeah, I think like our deputy commissioner put it best. He said we can't keep up with technology with our laws. We're always 5 years behind it. But the best thing we can do is like rely on sportsmen to not take advantage of it and
Yep.
use it correctly. I mean, out west, you go to Arizona, like they banned electronic game cameras because what they're doing is they're putting them on watering holes, and there was like 45 to 55 game cameras on these watering holes, and they were finding these large bucks, and they were selling them for the highest bidder. So it was like a competition to see who could get that deer, and here it's a little bit different. Like we don't have that. I mean, the reality is you put a game camera up here on something, and you may have a deer come along. You may not. He may come to a signpost rub. He may not this year. And
Right.
I mean, you can't target them like you can out west with the watering holes with the water shortage.
Yeah.
So luckily for us, we don't have that. But what we have seen is people using them behind their houses on bait piles and stuff. Like that's pretty, because they'll get the automatic notification, and then they're like, up,
No more driveway alarms, huh?
no more driveway alarms. Yeah. That's old news.
Yeah, it was interesting you said that Nathan was talking about the fawns might be down, and I was starting to think about that because in my travels and walks, I've seen a lot of does with no fawns. And I thought it was, in the beginning, usually early you see it because they leave their fawns, for first couple of weeks, I think, they go off and feed and leave them. But once those fawns are old enough to travel, they stay with them. And I've seen a lot with no fawns. And I was wondering, I didn't know how much rain would affect them, but
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it until Nathan mentioned it to me, and it makes sense. I mean, hypothermia, and like they're trying to regulate their temperature and stuff, and with the like rainy conditions that we've had that hasn't stopped, it's
Right.
just been continuous. That can have an effect on them.
in the rain we had a lot of rain earlier too, right about when everything's born, end of May, 1st of June, when the partridge chicks are hatching and the deer and the moose are being born. We had cold rains up here, up north anyways. I mean, we had a lot of rain, and it was in the 30s and 40s. That's probably was hard on stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still a lot of deer, though.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
there's
yeah.
still
You go
lots
for a
of
ride.
deer. Yeah,
You go for a ride or a
because
walk, there's
we
a lot of
basically didn't have any winter kill at all.
For the last few years.
Yeah. So yeah, there's plenty of deer. I mean, you can almost over around here now, and I'm sure Range's the same. You can get out on a gravel road anywhere and kick around, and you're going to see some deer tracks. It's nuts. I've been walking on my walks. I like to get in the woods, but the woods is so wet. And the horseflies now are better than deer flies.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can walk a gravel road, and it's unreal how many deer tracks you'll see.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't remember the mosquitoes being as bad as they've been lately.
I haven't seen any mosquitoes.
Oh, God. We had our reunion here last week, and
Probably because of the
everyone's
lake.
outside.
I haven't seen a mosquito
Brutal.
at my house for weeks, or a black fly. And now it's those deer flies. have
Yeah,
struck,
they're all
and
over my dogs.
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
Ooh.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you, well, we got you here, was I know they just passed. I knew it was info legislation, but they're giving the youth an extra day to deer hunt this year. And it's going to be a Friday and a Saturday before the season. Or the week before the season, I should say. And I read the law, and I was a little confused about it, because now that you can shoot 2 deer, if you get your doe permit, you can shoot a doe and a buck. And it says the youth this year can shoot a deer in any zone. It used to be you had to have doe permits in that zone for the youth to be able to shoot them, but now they can shoot them in any zone, which is good. It's good for anything good for the kids is good. And it said it's written in the law there that I read. It said that if the youth shoots a doe on Youth Day, one of the youth days, I interpret it as meaning they can't shoot a buck after that. It says, now the question I have is it because the youth can shoot a doe without a doe permit, right?
They can on Youth Day.
On Youth Day.
Yes, correct.
So, but it says in there, you can't shoot another doe. So I was wondering how that.
I think that I without seeing it exactly, but I think the interpretation that I had was that if they killed a doe on Youth Day, unless they purchased another antlerless permit, which they may be able to do depending on what zone they're in, they would be able to hunt bucks only at that time as their second deer. So that way they basically get a bonus deer for hunting on Youth Day. They could kill an antlerless. That's my interpretation of that, but without seeing it in front of me.
That's pretty cool. That's great for the kids.
I knew that there was some talk when that bill first went through too, that it was going to depend, like Friday was going to be does only for youth, like it always has been on the Saturday, but then Saturday it was going to change back to, like, it depended on where you were for the zone. So I'm not sure where that ended up in the legislative process.
Okay. I got it pulled up right here.
You are tech savvy.
Junior hunters may take one antlered deer statewide. We know that. Junior hunters may take antlerless deer without a permit in designated wildlife management areas, all the management areas this year. If a junior takes a deer during the youth hunt, they are prohibited from taking an additional deer unless they have an antlerless deer permits or participate in the expanded archery season. So, to me, I guess what that meant to me was that maybe it means if they didn't have a doe permit, they'd have to use their regular tag on it, and then they couldn't shoot another deer. It'd have to be an antlerless one. So
that's the way it sounds to me.
Right,
Yeah,
but I'm just wondering if they shoot a doe, if they have a doe permit and they have their regular tag, could they put their doe permit on it?
That's my interpretation. Right when you were saying that, I was thinking if you had an antlerless permit, you'd be able to tag that with your antlerless on Youth Day, and then you'd be able to still hunt for a buck
Right.
the rest of November.
That makes
See, I had to ask you this because my grandson's all worried about that now because he's the one that sent me that. He goes, hey, there's 2 days for youth this year. And I go, I heard there might be, Ryland. So
yeah, there were two bills in the legislature. One was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday youth hunt, and then they said Friday, Saturday, and the Friday, Saturday was the one that passed.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know which one, but he sent it to me, and so because he's got his fall all planned out, and so I can tell him now that he can, if he gets his doe permit, he can.
That would have been kind of a foot in the door for Sunday hunting, huh? If that would have.
that was sleight of hand.
Yeah, I think that was a poker play. I think that was
definitely
kind of one of those. Yeah.
Hey, you don't know unless you throw your cards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with those ones, I hate to see it thrown on the back of the youth because
Right.
you don't want if the landowners really don't want it, which they've spoken out and said clearly they don't. I hate to put it on the back of the youth to make it seem like we're not providing opportunity to youth.
Yeah.
Because we are. I mean, we're definitely doing that and trying to get more younger generation into hunting, like we were talking about earlier. So.
Yep.
Yeah, you must have to deal with this Sunday hunting a lot in this position you have now, but I always figured they always seem to go about it, the Sunday hunting, the wrong way. To me, I would think logically to break it down into unorganized township. Sunday hunting and unorganized township would basically be northern Maine, right? So, I would assume that the landowners in the North Maine woods would welcome that because that would give them extra revenue for the North Maine woods, especially for like bird hunting and stuff. Because we lose a lot of small game hunters to like New Hampshire and places they can hunt on Sundays.
Yeah.
If they could hunt Sunday in the unorganized territories, you wouldn't have the fight with the farmers and stuff and the small woodlot owners and stuff.
I do think, they are a pretty united front when it comes to landowners. North Maine Woods and the large landowners, they were right together with Swom on this one.
They were.
Yeah. And it's I think it's more of the fact that they're trying to stick together as landowners. And it's not they don't want to, and it's similar to the North versus the South, like, I mean, we can go back to the rebel flag and stuff, but I mean, when you talk about that, like, you don't want to.
Let's do that.
Yeah, you don't want to cause that controversy between the North, like people of Aroostook County versus the people of the Southern Maine. Unfortunately, like, you don't want that. And I think, like, the landowners did come together. They were pretty well against it. All of them, like, they all spoke out against it. But yeah, I mean, we deal with them all the time, and the biggest thing that comes up is if this gets pushed, it's reverse posting. It keeps coming back to reverse posting. And
well, I always felt. I know there's a group in Maine that staunchly think we got to have Sunday hunting. We have to have it. We're one of the. I think there's 2 states left that don't, or something.
Yeah, Maine and Massachusetts.
Right, but they're not thinking. I think they're misguided. That's all.
Well, the way that I look at it, since I've changed positions and I'm the landowner relations guy and I deal with landowners and the hunters, is that I look at it. We were talking about giving back to a landowner, and if you really break it down in the simple fact that we get 6 days to hunt during a week, and we're doing it on the backs of private landowners. 94 to 95% of land is privately owned, and to get 1 day where the landowner can go out and do whatever they want and not have hunters on their property, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it is.
I don't disagree.
Well, the next thing would be for landowners to be able to hunt on their own property. That's the next, logical step that they're going to go down. I've always seen that, although I would agree with it. Why not? It muddies the water. It makes it so difficult. It makes your guys' job more difficult.
Well, we saw this when it used to be Residence Day. Now it's Residence Day. You can be a non-resident if you own land in the state of Maine.
Right.
But you have to have a tax map and all that. Are you kidding me? Like, I got to go to the town office and look and see if this guy owns the land and he's not a relative or anything like that. And it does muddy the water for us from the enforcement perspective. And I've always said, I was like, we're all about compromise. Like, I mean, we have it so good. And if you really sit back and look at it, a good compromise is that the landowners get Sunday, and it's, hey, you know what, gives the deer a day to run around and kind of move into spots where you might think that they didn't get to. And it's a win-win for all, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they actually did that survey of the landowners before the legislation this year, and it was overwhelmingly they didn't want it. So I'm thinking, if you're pushing for this, and if you, for some reason, got it, you want 2/3 of the landowners to post it. Now you fought to get to hunt an extra day. Now you got nowhere to hunt.
And that's the biggest thing that we've heard from the landowners is, at this point, I mean, how many times has this come back? And they're like, we're getting to the point now where we feel like we're kind of getting picked on a little bit. Like, It keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. It'd be like us thinking about, I mean, the bear referendum coming back every single year.
Right.
And for us, it's a big deal. It's our management. It's how we manage wildlife. And we've talked about this a lot, but moose, deer, bear, all the big game animals, if we didn't have the support of the private landowners for everyone to access, what's the state going to do for management?
Right.
Like, we're not going to be able to maintain a moose population. Like the Zone 4 adaptive hunt that Lee Cantor's trying up there, like, that's all on the back of a private landowner. And whether that's going to, like, eradicate the tick or lower the tick population, we don't know yet. But the reality is, if we didn't have the opportunity to hunt on those landowners' land, we wouldn't have the opportunities that we do. Like, you're not going to be able to go out and hunt moose. You're not going to be able to go harvest bear. And the bear are going to be into your garbage can or in your barn. They're going to be biting the lady that punched that one down in Porter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be more wildlife conflict with the people. And you see that in other states, like New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey got rid of their bear hunt. The governor ran on a platform of getting rid of the bear hunt, and then he got inundated with bears being down there. And there's 600 to 700-pound bears down there because they're eating diapers. They're in the trash cans eating diapers and eating all this stuff. Yeah. And now they've brought the bear hunt back because they need the management. They need to regulate the bear population. And really, when you look at it from our department's perspective, we have no way of managing managing the wildlife populations if we don't have the aspect of landowners.
That's right. Yep. So, you know the old saying on the what is it? A dead dog lie or something, you know. That's what I think
it's a sleeping one, but if yours is dead.
Yeah, I'm dead.
Yeah. I think
he's going to lie there.
He's got a stuffed dog. He got a stuffed dog in the house, too.
Yeah. It ought to be in the Sunny Hunt, and it ought to be a dead dog.
Well.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple of housekeeping things here before we wrap it up. If any of you Chris told me I have to do this one. If any of you get your podcast on Stitcher, I guess Stitcher is gone. They're not you can't download out of Stitcher anymore, your podcast. So
they used to be called Seamstress.
Yeah, Stitcher. But it was actually one of the big ones, and I don't know why they're. But anyways, you're going to have to get a podcast somewhere else if you've got your, not your iPhone, but your other one, Androids or whatever. Stitcher's gone. All right. We have we already did packs and jackets. Yep, update, get them. Trying to read off my thing here. I guess I got it. Oh, I got it. I got another one. Everybody can see you guys, how you laugh at me now. We want to get back. When we first started this podcast, podcasting, I was grabbing questions. I used to do a question of the month thing on a club. And I want to get back to doing that again. So I've been getting randomly, I get people ask questions or topics or something they'd like to see on the podcast. So if you got any questions, topics, suggestions, anything like that, we're going to start doing at least one or two questions on every podcast to answer that stuff for you. I think it'll be fun. So email those to me, and I can weed them out because Joe will get rid of more than I would.
What's your email?
You know what it is.
Well, I do, but they might not.
My email's pretty easy, hal@bigwoodsbucks.com.
There.
Yeah, email me those questions, and some of them I'm sure will be similar, and I'll put them together, and we'll start getting them answered up.
I think we just passed 6 years, didn't we?
Did we pass it yet?
Yeah.
I know. 6 years is an eternity. That's what it is.
No, we didn't pass 6 years. We passed 5. We're into year 6.
Into year 6.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Yep. Hard to believe. Seems like it was.
I've only got 3 years into it, but.
Yeah. Lee's been on halftime. Yeah. Halftime and half salary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Seems like it was like a couple of weeks ago, Joe said, "Hey, we ought to do a podcast." And I said, "What the heck's a podcast, you know?" And here we are.
Still trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah. So now we got this new format where you can see us, so we can't make any rude gestures to each other or anything.
I haven't been able to text.
Yeah.
Or pick my nose.
Yeah. Lee's here, and he's being a good boy today, so we can't. Maybe he's not going to be able to be called Bad Lee anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, you're sure to see some annex, but I think one of the fun things we ought to do is we ought to have get Garnett on again and get him on video doing this stuff because he was one of the well-requested ones here.
You should do a 3-hour one so you can edit an hour and a half out.
I was thinking we should have had Garnett here with Chris.
I think I listened to one of his podcasts, and I was like, man, he'd be a good interrogation.
Yeah. That's what we call it when he comes podcasting. When
Yeah.
It's just an interrogation.
Yeah, he gets halfway into it and he goes, well, I can't talk about it.
Probably the statute of limitations is up on a lot of his.
Yeah, I'm sure it
Probably
is.
all set.
Yeah. Well, he's a half berry, so you know how that is. All right.
But entertaining as hell.
Yeah, that's right. He's walking the straight road now. All right. So, great.
Hal couldn't even say that with a straight face.
I was trying to not to look at Kris when I was saying that.
No, I actually think Garnett's been on the straight and narrow for a while.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I think we all mature out of those stupid things that we did when we were young.
Yeah. I was hoping I had something to do with it when he started guiding for me. I kept pretty good eye on him and stuff, and I think maybe that turned him around a little bit once he got guiding. But
I was waiting for Lee to say something about straight and narrow once you get older.
I was going to say I had to. The biggest reason I came here today was to make sure that everybody had their guns unloaded. Cops are here.
Yeah. Well, great having you on, Kris. Thanks for taking the time to come down or come up for you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for everything you do with the Landowner. I know.
Yeah.
I chew your ear off. We got a lot of crap going on all the time. So
I didn't even realize you were Landowner Relations. So now I have your number. So it's good.
Yeah. I hope they gave you a big pay raise with that job.
Yeah, I work for the state, so that'd be a no.
That'd be a no. Yeah. And I hope everybody that hunts Maine or thinking about coming here to understand what we talked about, that it is private land, but it's really a good system for us, and it's been working good forever. And
so don't screw it up.
Yeah, don't screw it up, and hopefully it continues forever.
We did talk about a lot today, but really, it's really good just how it is. It's like one of those things you just would love for it to stay just how it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I don't think it can be improved on. So, okay then. Until next time, good luck on the trail.
Hi everyone, team member Mark Sheeran here. I've been helping people solve their addictions for the last 34 years. In 2017, we published the revolutionary non-12-step book, The Freedom Model for Addictions. If you'd like a free paperback copy sent directly to you, go to freebook.freedommodel.org. That's freebook.freedommodel.org. All right, take care.
Hey guys, Joe here. Wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Lake Parlin Lodge. We're a 4-season lodge located just south of Jackman. We've got cabins, lodge rooms, mini lodge. We're a big snowmobile destination in the winter, full restaurant, bar, all the amenities that you need for your trip. Open obviously through the summer, right on the lake. Kayaks, canoes, all included with the cabin. We also do a lot of weddings, so if you're looking for a destination wedding, we can do a wedding up to 200 people. And, of course, we've got our hunting season, moose season, deer season. So check us out. We're at lakeparlinlodge.com.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, good luck on the trail.